Excuse me, sir. Would you like another hot take?
Yeah, definitely. Keep them coming.
How's it going, everyone? We have a fantastic show for you. We are going to have tons of draft analysis, how we think they'll impact fantasy football, and of course, next week, discuss the draft. But first, let's go ahead and jump into our hot takes. First up, we're going to talk about LeBron James, the GM, and how he is his own worst enemy. Think about this. If he didn't just tear that team apart to get Anthony Davis, he'd have Kyle Kuzma, Alex Caruso, Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball. I know his knee and everything, but he was a good defender and he started to turn into a good spot up 3-and-D guy. Josh Hart, Julius Randle, and behind the scenes, maybe they would have kept D'Angelo Russell. I know that's a year before, but just think of that young talent if they wouldn't have blown up that team just to get LeBron James, Anthony Davis, who, when healthy, is one of the best players. But instead of just having one championship, LeBron, you would have had two, three, four, had your legacy going up against Jordan, going against Kobe. But because you always have to tear a team apart and be the GM and facilitator, you basically made it where you're going to get one championship as a Laker. And that is it. Next hot take, Yankees. Ryan Cashman, you need to go. Aaron Judge is proving why you do not sign old sluggers. He gave us a couple good years. He's 31 now, all right? He's going to be 32 next year. And that long swing, his big body type, he is just going to start breaking down. Maybe it's the toe that's messing with him. He might have little spurts, but now we have Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge, who might be two huge albatross of contract, and we had them for years and years and years. Bye-bye, Brian Cashman. All right, it's on to you, Jordan.
Get your hot takes here. Get your hot takes here. This is what I got cooking up for you guys this week. Rafael Nadal will play in the French Open at the end of May. And not only is he going to play, he will do well. And this will probably be the last French Open that we see him in, as he did say that 2024 would be his last year. Let's hope not. Let's hope he keeps going. He's been out since last summer, aside from a match he played in March in the Netflix Slam against Carlos Alcaraz. But he will be playing this week in the Barcelona Open, which is the first clay court event of the season. He has a record 12 titles, so I expect to see him in the French Open later this year. And also, with Manchester City being knocked out, as I said they would win the Champions League, I now think PSG will take the Champions League. Mbappe will ride off into the sunset with Real Madrid, where he wins a few more Champions Leagues. Take it away, Jacob.
Thanks, Jordan, and these are my hot takes for the week. CMC will not be running back one in fantasy this year. CMC is an amazing talent, is one of the greatest running backs we've seen in a long time, but it's very hard to repeat as running back one in fantasy, and he is also going into his year 28 season and has a history with injuries. Because of this, I still think McCaffrey will have a monster year, but I would expect some modest regression and maybe see him in that running back 5 range instead of running back 1. Overall, I still think he's going to be a top dog in fantasy, but I just don't think he's going to be on the very top this season. The Patriots will trade the 3rd pick. I believe the Patriots are going to trade the 3rd pick. There's a lot of rumbling about the Vikings or Giants moving up to pick number 3 to take a quarterback, and I think this makes a lot of sense for the Patriots as they can move down and fill up a lot of holes that they have in that roster, especially if the guy that is there at number 3 is not the guy they want. I suspect that they want Jaden Daniels, but it looks like he's going to go at number 2. So I think they're going to move out here. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Vikings to move up. They have a great roster, a great situation, and they can go get the rookie quarterback they want. I think it's Drake May, and then they can plug him in when he's ready to be a difference maker for them down the line.
My hot take of the week is that there will be at least 5 trades this Thursday on day 1 of the NFL draft. That's right, at least 5 trades in round 1 Thursday night, including a trade as early as number 4 overall. That's right.
What's up, everyone? It's Donna back here this week. My hot takes are that the Golden Knights are going to win the Stanley Cup this year. They won last year, and they're going to do it again this year. They are playing the Dallas Stars tonight. Mark Stone is healthy. He's going to be playing in tonight's game. I am rooting for the Golden Knights. If you guys never been to a hockey game, I highly recommend you go to one. They are so much fun. And on top of that, I just wanted to add that I believe the Buffalo Bills did a mistake of letting go of Stephon Diggs. I believe the Houston Texans are going to be a really strong football team this year, and I think all the teams should watch out for the Texans.
Today, Jordan and I are going to debate Washington Commanders running back Brian Robinson and whether he will be a good pick for you this year in fantasy. And I will do the honor of starting with the pros on Brian Robinson. First off, Brian Robinson is entering his third year in the league, and he has gotten better each year and received more opportunity each year. Now that Antonio Gibson is gone, that should be an even greater opportunity for him. Seeing as Antonio Gibson was a top 40 running back in fantasy last year, that's a lot of points that have left the backfield. The Commanders signed Cliff Kingsbury as their offensive coordinator, and in the past, when he's been in the NFL as a head coach or coordinator, his offenses, including the running back position specifically, has been very fantasy friendly. I think back to David Johnson on the Cardinals. Now, I'm not saying Brian Robinson will be the RB1 overall. I don't think that. I think that since they signed this other guy named Austin Eckler to $11 million over 2 years, that will cap Robinson's upside. But at the end of the day, Austin Eckler was brought in to take on Antonio Gibson's role and then a little bit more. I do think that both Robinson and Eckler have top 20 upside this year. I think they could both finish in that RB 15 to 25 range on this Commanders offense. And I'd be looking to draft Brian Robinson as my RB3 in fantasy this year. Sam Howell took his 56 rushing points over to the Seahawks. And yes, Jaden Daniels will run a little bit, but he's not going to have 5 rushing touchdowns like Sam Howell did. Most of those should go straight to Brian Robinson. I'd expect 12 to 15 touchdowns this year from Brian Robinson.
Man, Kevin, you are very, very optimistic on Robinson. But let's be real here for a second. The man ranked 31st in opportunity share last year, and he was 32nd in red zone touches. That's definitely going to impact his potential for high-scoring games next year. And with Eckler coming in, he is going to have to battle with him for the passing downs and the red zone touches. I wouldn't draft him with your pick.
This is a poker hand I played at 1-2 stakes at Shuffle 512 in Austin, Texas. In this hand, the cutoff raised to $12, and I made the call on the button with 8-6 of spades, and both the blinds folded. The flop came Queen Jack 7 with 1 spade. The cutoff bet 15, and I made the call. Here in position, I decided to float the flop with a backdoor flush and straight draw, with the intentions of turning my hand into a bluff later if he showed weakness. The turn is the perfect card for us. It comes to 7 of spades, pairing the board and giving us a flush draw. And now he checks. So at this point, I think we have a mandatory bluff, since the 7 is a much better card for my range. I think I can get him off a lot of his range if I go bet here. So I'm planning to bet here and then jam the river. So I bet 40 and he makes the call. The river comes the Jack of clubs, double pairing the board, and he checks again. I don't think he has a lot of Jack X in his range, so I stick with my plan and I rip it all in for 155. And at this point, he goes into the tank and I'm praying for a fold, but he ends up making the call with ace queen of clubs. This is a poker hand I played at 1-2 stakes at Shuffle 512 in Austin, Texas. In this hand, the under the gun limped, the +1 limped, and then the MP raised to $15. 2 players called behind, and I'm in the big blind with 6-9 of spades, and I make the call as well since I'm getting like $1,000,000 to 1 here. The flop comes ace queen deuce with 2 spades, so we flop a flush draw. I check and floater the pre-flop razor, and the action checks through. The turn comes gin for us. It comes the Jack of spades. Here I decide to check. I'm getting a little bit tricky here. Maybe I shouldn't be, but I thought in this spot that one of my opponents could easily have 2 pair or a straight, and I could go for a check raise. So I check, and action unfortunately checks through again. The river comes the king of diamonds, and now the small blind bets for $15. So of course I have to raise here. I got to make up for missed value and target straights. So I raised to 80, and now the under the gun +1 calls my raise. And the action folds back to the small blind, and he calls as well, and we're good with our flush against 2 straights. We end up scooping a decent pot.
All right, we are playing 2-3 at the California Grand Casino. Had a nice little meetup, gave some merch, met some really, really nice people. So let's get into the first hand. We look down at 5-3 of hearts in middle position, and I limp, and it limps all the way to small blind, who makes it 15. This guy had been pretty tight, but I make the call and 4 others do. So we go 6 ways to the flop. The flop is the Jack of Hearts, the 2 of Clubs, the 3 of Diamonds. The small blind now leads for 25. I'm thinking he's, maybe just c-betting. I have a pair, backdoor flush, backdoor straight. So I call and the rest fold. The turn is a 3 of spades. Now I'm loving it, and small blind leans for 75. I flat, not one, blowing him off his hand, and we go to the river. The river is a 9 of hearts. The small blind now bets 120. I think for a few seconds, and I go all in. And he tanks for multiple minutes, and he folds. He later tells me he had pocket queens, and I believe him. I just couldn't believe that he put, 75% of his stack, maybe a little bit less, and then wouldn't call off the last 120. Good for him. He was a very, very solid player. I played with him later on, and definitely respected his game and the fact that he could make that fold when a lot of people would just put it in there. So, good for him. Wish he got more, but we were happy taking down that pot. Okay, next poker hand. We are still playing at the California Grand Casino, still playing 2-3. A little bit of insight. This player was a fantastic player. I could tell he was a grinder. I mean, he was watching everyone as the cards. People looked at him. I mean, just a really sharp player. I tried every trick I could to get this guy to pay me at different times. I had trips one hand, and I went with my stop and go play, didn't pay that off. One time I flopped the nuts and I got one street of value from him, but he was just a really, really sharp player. So I want to give that insight just before I talk about kind of the weird line I took in this hand, trying to get him to pay me. So, ungun player, who I just talked about, he raises to 15. It folds to me in the big blind, and I look down at pocket aces. So I'm trying to think how I can get him to actually pay me. So I decide to flat. So we go to a flop. The flop is the king of hearts, the 4 of spades, the 7 of spades. I check, and he c-bets for $20, and I flat. I'm loving it, hoping he has ace king. The turn is a 7 of hearts. I check, hoping he'll bet again. There's 2 flushes on the board now, and he checks back. On the river, the 7 of clubs. I bet 53, thinking he's got to call it if he's got a king for his boat, and he mucks. And he later tells me he had jack 10 of hearts, so I hate that I missed that bet on the turn. But again, I just couldn't get max value from him. How would you guys have played that hand with the aces? Would you have bet the turn? Would you have done what I did on the river? Just let me know in the comments.
These are my top running back prospects in the NFL draft. At number 1, I have Jalen Wright from Tennessee. He has elite vision. He also has great top-end speed that allows him to finish big plays and make touchdowns. He averaged over 7 yards per carry last year at Tennessee, and he's definitely a guy who I think can make big plays in the NFL right out of the gates as a rookie. At number 2, I have Trey Benson. He has that rare combination of size and speed that allow him to break off huge plays. He also possesses vision and patience as a runner, and he can make something out of nothing, even when he doesn't get the best blocking. Depending on the landing spot, I think he could end up being the number 1 running back prospect in Dynasty and for the NFL. At number 3, I have Braylon Allen. He is an absolute monster who has great power as a runner and also has breakaway speed. He was great in terms of production at Wisconsin as well, and I think he can step in and be a starter in the NFL from day 1. At number 4, I have Ray Davis from Kentucky. Davis was an absolute mauler, and when he got the football in his hands with the Wildcats, he made a lot of big plays. Watching him run, you can tell he really understands the game and has a high football IQ. He has great power and speed, and I think he'll be very good at the next level. And at number 5, I have Blake Corum. He has elite production in college, rushing for 27 touchdowns last year with the Wolverines and winning a national championship. He's got great power despite his smaller frame, and he showed that he can handle goal line work as well. I'm higher on him than most, and I think he's going to be a very good back in the NFL. At 6, I have Jonathan Brooks. I'm not as sold on Brooks as other people are. He's coming off a major injury and only had one season with great production in college. He also doesn't have that home run speed like some of the other backs in this class. While I do think he'll be a good pro, I'm just not quite as high on him as others. At 7, I have Marshawn Lloyd out of USC. He averaged over 7 yards per carry last year, and he does have that flash that you see on tape where he can make those big plays and make those big chunk plays that are so important for NFL offenses in this day and age. And depending on his landing spot, I think he could definitely move up here for me in terms of Dynasty. At 8, I have Will Shipley. He was very solid at Clemson, and he also showed good ability as a receiver, which will make him valuable in PPR formats for Dynasty leagues. At number 9, I have Tyrone Tracy out of Purdue. Similar to Shipley, Tracy has that receiving upside as he is a converted wide receiver. He has good hands in the passing game and has shown a good ability to make people miss and make big plays with his top-notch speed and athleticism. And at 10, I have Bucky Irving out of Oregon. This is a guy who I think could move up a lot depending on landing spot. He was someone I was very high on coming out of Oregon originally, but a bad combine has kind of knocked him down. He reminds me a lot of Jalen Warren on the Steelers, and I think he might end up being a steal in rookie drafts.
Welcome to Miller Time. I'm Kevin Miller with The Degenerate Gambling Life, and on today's episode, I am going to go over how I think the NFL Draft will play out this Thursday and Friday, and really just where I think the top few players at each position will get drafted and how soon. All right, I'm going to start with the quarterback position. I think my goal here is to get 50% of all my picks right. I'm going to make 16 total picks at all the positions combined. So if I can get 8 or more right, I'd be very impressed because it's wildly unpredictable. The NFL Draft, there's tons of trades and teams make moves that make no sense. Think last year, back to the Lions and the Seahawks, just loading up on offensive players. Wasn't expecting that. But anyways, without further ado, the quarterbacks, number 1, Caleb Williams is going to go first overall to the Chicago Bears. This is no surprise. You can lock it in. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it. Same as number 2, Jaden Daniels to the Washington Commanders. I think these 2 picks are very chalky, and I think the draft begins at number 3, like I mentioned in my hot take in a previous week. And at number 3, I do think the Patriots will stick to Drake May, and they're going to take the top quarterback that's left. They're in a little bit of a weird spot because they might want to reach for QB4, who's J.J. McCarthy, but ultimately the Vikings are going to get J.J. McCarthy at 11th overall, and they are picking right ahead of the Broncos and the Raiders, so there could be some funny business for those 3 teams fighting for J.J. McCarthy. And I do think the 5th quarterback that will be taken will be Michael Penix. I think the Broncos will take him at the 27th overall pick in the first round with a trade from Arizona. That's how I think the top 5 QBs shake out. The running back position, I only have Jonathan Brooks going in the first round to the Dallas Cowboys, 24th overall. I do think he's the most talented running back on the board. If he wasn't coming off an injury, he'd probably be ranked higher in fantasy and in the NFL draft. But he is, there's a little risk. So Jonathan Brooks, first one off the board. Second running back, Blake Corum to the Chargers, going early second, 37th overall pick. I think this is a great fit with Harborough going back to Michigan and the college football, and it probably won't happen, but this is where I think it's going to happen. My number 3 pick, Trey Benson, going to the Raiders, 44th overall. Their backfield is currently composed of Alexander Madison, who has proven he can't handle anything, and Zamir White, who came on strong at the end of last year, but we know how that usually carries over to the next year, or how it doesn't. So I think Benson goes to the Raiders. My 4th running back off the board, Marshawn Lloyd to the Panthers with the first pick of the 3rd round. I don't think that the running backs are going to go that high this year, whereas last year we had Bijan and Gibbs go in the top 12 overall. But I think 1 running back goes in the first round, 2 go in the second round. I think Lloyd goes at the first pick of the 3rd round, and I think Jalen Wright goes directly after him to the Cardinals at pick 66 overall with that 2nd pick of the 3rd round. At the wide receiver position, I do think this will be interesting to see how it shakes out, but there's a couple big names up top, and we're going to start with Marvin Harrison going 5th overall to the Chargers. The Chargers got rid of their top 2 receivers and their top running back. Do we really think they're not going to make moves on draft day? They're going to take Corum, and they're going to take Harrison, and they're going to be sitting prettier than they were before with young, good players. But anyways, we're going to go to number 2 at wide receiver, and that's Malik Neighbors, where he goes 6th overall to the Cardinals when they trade up with the Giants to nab Malik Neighbors. The 3rd wide receiver that I believe gets taken is Rome Odunze. That's no secret there. Everyone's expecting him to be the 3rd one taken, if not 1st or 2nd. And I think he goes, as all the Bears fans are hoping that I say number 9, but I think he goes 1 pick ahead, number 8 overall to the Falcons, where they last year selected number 8 overall on Bijan. But we've seen them make 1st-round picks on Bijan, London, and Pitts the last 3 years, so I think they make it a 4th year in a row and just keep going on that offense. The 4th wide receiver that I think comes off the board is Brian Thomas to the Steelers, 20th overall. I think after Odunze goes, there's about a 10-pick drought before that many offensive players go. I think it's going to be a lot of linemen and defense that go picks 10 through 20, and I think Brian Thomas will go to the Steelers, 20th overall. And my 5th and final wide receiver that I think will get taken is Xavier Worthy to the Chiefs with the last pick of the 1st round, 32nd overall. They've been using that late 1st round pick on a luxury offensive player several years in a row, and I think that they could take a shot on Worthy. Their owner has been come out and said that they need wide receiver help regardless of the Rashee Rice incident, and I think that Worthy makes for a good fit to that team. And finally, at tight end, as of right now, there's really only one tight end that's worth discussing for the draft and for fantasy, and that's Brock Bowers, and he is going to go in the 1st round. He is going to go in the top half of the 1st round, and he is going to go 10th overall to the Jets, Jets. Yeah, that's what's going to happen. Bowers to the Jets. It's pretty much inked in. So these are my predictions on the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. I listed off 16 guys, and if I can hit on 8 of them, that'd be pretty awesome. Why don't you guys leave a comment about what you think will happen, if you agree, disagree, what moves you think are going to happen, who's going to trade up or down, and why, and we'll see who gets it right.
Soccer hooligans.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Added Minutes. We had some semifinal FA Cup action to report for you guys this weekend. And we'll start with the snooze fest that was Manchester City versus Chelsea. Chelsea had a real opportunity here to get to another cup final this season in a season that obviously has not been very kind to them. They're sitting in 9th place right now in the league. So this was their only chance for silverware, and they blew it. They ended up losing 1-0. They had plenty of chances. Well, Nicholas Jackson had most of the chances, and he had 2, maybe 3 chances, one-on-one with the goalie, or at least in behind the defense, and he did not take those chances at all. Man City ends up winning 1-0 in what was, like I said, a snooze fest. And the other semifinal that was on Sunday, that was Manchester United versus championship side Coventry, and this game started great for United. They were up 2-0 at the half. They added a 3rd in the 58th minute via Bruno Fernandes, and then the wheels started to fall off. Coventry scores twice in 10 minutes, in the 71st minute and the 79th minute, and it was looking like they were going to have momentum to get a 3rd, but it was not coming. However, in the 95th minute, they were awarded a penalty kick, and United States men's national team Haji Wright steps up and converts 3-3. This one is going into extra time. In extra time, it was back and forth, and in the 120th minute, Victor Torp got in behind the Manchester United defense, and he buries it in the back of the net. 4-3, Coventry. But wait a minute. Here's VAR. Oh, VAR. VAR. Why do you do this to us? Well, guess what? He was a centimeter offside. He was literally probably like this far offside. You know, that shouldn't be called, but technically offsides. So the goal is disallowed. This one goes into penalties. Man United wins 4-2 on penalties. There is a May 25th Manchester Derby in the FA Cup final. First time that there's ever been a Manchester Derby in the FA Cup final, so make sure you tune into that one. We'll finish us off with some one-timers. Jude Bellingham scores last minute in the 97th minute to give Real Madrid the win in El Clasico over Barcelona, pretty much wrapping up the league. Stanisic for Bayer Leverkusen scores in the 97th minute to tie Dortmund as Leverkusen's streak extends to 45 games. Aston Villa's comeback, they were down 1-0. They end up winning 3-1. They are in the top 4 and cruising. And West Ham slips, leaving the door open for Chelsea. That'll do it for the added minutes this week. We'll catch you next week.
All right, let's talk a little fancy baseball. I had a request to do closers. I'm going to tell you why I haven't really done closers. Yes, they're valuable. The problem is when someone starts to get saves, they are snapped up. It's hard to do a video that lasts throughout the week and have a player that if you're watching this on Saturday is still available. Closers are just something that you have to pay attention to the team. If their current closer is starting to be shaky, Rangers Leclerc, and then they pivot to the guy I'm going to mention, you just got to pay attention. I would say the biggest thing to look for is if a guy has 2 saves in a week, and it's not an injury to the current closer, maybe snap him up and just hope that that is the new closer. So, going to give you 3 players. First, Kirby Yates, Texas Rangers. He's only available now in 34% of leagues. He gave you 2 wins last week on the season. He gave you 3 saves. His K per 9 is 9.2. His ERA is 0, and his WHIP is .40. So I'm sure by the time you watch this, it'll probably be even less. But if you can, Kirby Yates, Texas Rangers. Next, Joel, just going to say P, on the Milwaukee Brewers. He is the current closer until Williams gets back from his back injury. So he's worth adding on that team as they're, a winning team, so he should be able to get you some saves. Finally, James MacArthur, Kansas City Royals. He's available in 48% leagues. The Royals are surprising this year, and he's got some really good numbers. So look to add Kirby Yates, Joel P. on the Brewers, and James MacArthur on the Kansas City Royals, and hopefully they're still available when you watch this. Thank you all so much for making it to the end. We really appreciate you watching. If you haven't yet, take a moment to hit that like, comment, and subscribe button. Just a quick announcement. We will be in Vegas June 6th to the 10th. We will have at least one meetup game. I know it's during the World Series, so we are going to try to plan something at Caesars if we can, maybe South Point, but we will let you know the details within the next few weeks. And we're teaming up with the Southern Poker Tour to have 2 meetup games in Shreveport while they're running their tournament. Their tournament will be at the Horseshoe in Shreveport, June 19th through the 23rd. So come check out their tournament. If you bust out, or if you're a cash game player and maybe one of your buddies is a tournament player, come out, man. You can do both. Play cash game with us, do the tournament, do a little bit of both. But again, that's the Southern Poker Tour, Bossier City. It's going to be at the Horseshoe, aka Shreveport, June 19th through the 23rd. Also, our website is live. Check it out. Grab some DGL gear. We have hats, hoodies, we have golf t-shirts, we have dress shirts. Lots of merchandise for you guys to check out. Get some for Father's Day or for yourself. And we look forward to talking to you guys next week.